Is Canelo Alvarez shot? This is one of the themes that's being heavily shopped as we continue to explore all aspects of this fight. This is your boy JG. This is the Punch Report. In this video, we examine Canelo Alvarez. Is he long in the tooth? Now, before we get into it, please like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to be notified when all the videos drops. Every video I drop leading up to this fight will be about this fight, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. Yesterday, we talked about the weight, and I asked a question. Moving up in weight, Crawford really, in my opinion, from 47 to 68, despite the fight at 54 with Madrimov. Is it too much? In this particular video, we examine Canelo Alvarez slowing down, doesn't move as well. Is he the same fighter that allowed him to ascend to the top of the sport of boxing? And that is the question. Now, I understand the urge to go this direction as you examine this fight and these fighters. It's interesting that we have this conversation because Bud Crawford is 37, soon to be 38. Canelo Alvarez is currently 35 years of age. The main difference being Canelo Alvarez has 67 professional bouts to his record. Started boxing in Mexico at the tender age, I believe, of 15, 16 years old. And he's been at this for a while. 67 bouts is a huge number. Let's focus in on what his last three performances. He had the Jaime Munguia fight, he had Edgar Berlanga, and then lastly William Skull, which left much to be desired. Here's my theory on Canelo, and if he's long in the tooth, is he slowing down? Is he not the same fighter? He's jumped up from 47 as high as a 175, light heavyweight, and he's had success knocking out and then really getting peppered and beat up pretty good by Dimitri Bivol, but still made an account of himself, did the best that he could against an elite guy in the weight who just had a style that was really tailor-made to beat Canelo, who wasn't willing to switch up or go to a plan B. I think the thing that ends up happening with Canelo Alvarez is he's the type of guy who's had so much success during the course of his boxing career. I think he gets up and down for certain fights. And what do I mean by that? I think he got up for the Caleb Plant fight, which was a great fight. Caleb Plant came out, looked sharp, boxed well, didn't have the power to keep Canelo off him, ultimately got stopped. I think for Jaime Munguia, he showed up for that fight and was like, guy can't really hurt me, and he's a punching bag, I'll be just fine. Oddly enough, Edgar Berlanga, if you go back and take a look at that fight, Canelo looked very fast, very strong. He respected Berlanga more so than he did Munguia, even though I don't think Berlanga had been looking that good and don't really believe that he deserved that fight. But for whatever reason or another, if you go back and watch that fight, it does go the distance. Berlanga gets dropped bad in the third with a tricky left hook. But Canelo Alvarez looked very fast, good hand speed, good combination. I would not describe Canelo Alvarez as a fighter who's super fast, but in that particular bout he got up for Berlanga for whatever reason. And then the William Skull fight, which is, a fight I want to spend a little bit of time on thinking about as we prepare to see him go up against Terence Bud Crawford. Skull, Cuban fighter, moved around a lot, got called a runner. I think he just tried to do the best he can to pick his shots and land combination punches. The issue you run into if you're Canelo Alvarez is you're not going to get a lot of opportunities against a guy like he's going to move a bunch, and you got to make the most of those opportunities. And I really do believe that in this particular bout, Canelo Alvarez knew he was not going to lose in the cards. Skull's not a notable puncher, and Canelo Alvarez could follow him around the ring, kind of fail to cut it off, land some power here and there, and win easy, and that's what he did. And so the reason why I bring those three fights up is because I think Canelo Alvarez, at this stage in his career, has a legitimate pattern of deciding who he's going to get up for versus who he's going to go in there and collect a check for. I think Jermell Charlo was kind of somewhere in the middle, where he got brought up after the Castaño fight to fight Canelo, and I think Canelo probably knew he was going to be the better fighter. He definitely had the advantage in the weight and the power coming up. That's why that experience thing is kind of a big deal. And he just kind of walked to Charlo and gave him work. How does this factor into Bud Crawford and how he shows up for this fight? Despite the fact that Bud Crawford's coming up from 47/54, moving past 60 to 68, I think I'm of the opinion, because of what may happen if Canelo Alvarez loses this bout, he knows he has to show up in crazy shape and be ready to fight the best version of Bud Crawford ever. I think that Canelo and team know better than to play games with a fighter as dangerous as Bud Crawford. You could say what you want to say about Bud. Weight's too much. He doesn't have the power, new to the division, hasn't tested himself out in the upper weight classes, but he's kind of the type you're going to have to beat the dog shit out of Bud Crawford or be so skilled as a boxer. That's not to say that Canelo isn't. I don't think he's so skilled where just straight out box Bud Crawford. I think he's going to have to mix it up. His chin's probably going to get tested by a sharp puncher like Bud Crawford. And he's going to have to really rely on his experience because he has more of it, his power, and the fact that he's been at these upper weights much longer. I'm never going to move off my position of acknowledging that's an advantage for Canelo Alvarez. Not to say that Bud Crawford could not overcome that, but it is indeed an advantage for one Canelo Alvarez. I don't think Canelo's long in the tooth. I don't think that he's washed. I do think that he's a different fighter, a smarter fighter, more calculated, and very deliberate in his approach. If he feels as though he cannot get away with a thing, then he will not do that thing. For some of those fighters that I mentioned, those last 4 fighters, so Charlo, Berlanga, Dimitri Bivol, and who am I missing? William Skull. For those fighters, with the exception of Dimitri Bivol, because Canelo tried his hand and Bivol was too big and also ridiculously skilled and a unique talent. But the remainder of those fighters, I feel like Canelo knew essentially within 2 rounds, 3 rounds, what he was going to be able to get away with. I think for Skull and Munguia, I think he knew before he got in the ring what he was going to be able to get away with. For whatever reason or another, like I mentioned before, for Berlanga, I think he got up for that fight because he looked really good in my opinion. I think he's going to be primed and ready to go for Bud Crawford. What does this mean for Bud Crawford? It means he's going to have to beat a really good version of Canelo Alvarez if that's what he's going to end up doing. In my next video, I really want to dive deep into the skill sets, so make sure you guys are tuned in for that. Hit that subscribe button. Just for a preview perspective of that particular video, I'm really intrigued by power versus speed and the application of those attributes. And at what point in time does size become much too much for a skilled fighter like Bud Crawford to overcome? Because if he was just moving up and fighting a guy that was big with power, but limited from a skill set perspective, then I think you're pretty comfortable moving your money to Bud Crawford. But because Canelo Alvarez is really defensively sound, has a granite chin, like I'm going to continue to talk about this. He's had that chin tested. He's been hit with big shots from bigger guys with more power than Bud Crawford, and he's been unaffected, clean, hard shots. Bud Crawford is a sharp puncher and he's an accurate puncher. So maybe the way he delivers it could make a difference in that bout against Canelo. We have to see that. But for Bud Crawford, I'm willing to bet, if nothing else, he's going to get a high-quality version of Canelo Alvarez, which puts him in a position to look really great. If he goes out there and gets the job done, and he does it successfully, I'm not going to get on my channel and say, well, Bud Crawford won, Canelo was washed, and he wasn't the same guy. That's not happening. It's not happening. And on the other side of that is, if Bud Crawford goes in here and gets beat up and stopped in 7 rounds, people will say there's weight classes for a reason, and Bud dared to be great. I reject that. You took the time, you took no tune-ups, you moved up in weight. I think you did it responsibly, got full, then started to slim down. You saw the photos from yesterday on his social media. He looks good. That means you put yourself in a position to experience success at the new division, 168 pounds. And if you get cooked up, then you just get cooked up. And I think he would even co-sign that. I don't think Bud Crawford would be looking for any excuses if he went in there and got washed up. That's not my prediction, but I'm saying for both guys, if you get the victory, you're getting the credit. At least from me. I'm not going to shit on the fight from that perspective. But let me know what you guys think. My position is this. I think Bud Crawford gets a really great version of Canelo. I don't believe Canelo to be washed. I just think he's deliberate about how he shows up and the way he shows up based on who he's fighting. And then he applies himself as such. This is your boy JG. This has been the Punch Report. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon to be notified when the videos drop. We out.